Without any waste of time, let me greet viewers out there and read a statement after the ANC National Executive Committee as well as the ANC Lekgotla, where the alliance partners, the leagues, and different people from different sectors and stakeholders were present. Our statement reads as: the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress met in its annual Lekgotla, that is from the 20th to the 21st of January. And you know that Lekgotlas are gatherings of the ANC NEC, alliance partners and deployed cadres in various spheres of society to monitor progress with implementation of our program of social transformation. The January 2019 Lekgotla took place as the mandate of the 5th administrations comes to an end and the holding of national and provincial general elections in May will be taking place. It also takes place as we prepare to celebrate the 25th anniversary of our democracy on 27 April this year, the year of freedom. The ANC Lekgotla noted the successful launch of the ANC elections campaign and manifesto in Durban on the 12th of January 2019 and celebrated 107 years since the birth of the ANC, and we declared 2019 as the year of united action to grow South Africa. The Lekgotla concentrated
seem to be struggling with that line. They will get that back up as soon as possible, of course, as the General Secretary of the ANC continues to detail the latest from the National NEC and the National Executive Committee meeting and their latest Lekgotla to have just finished. Now, let's quickly move on to some other news very quickly, and we'll get back to that as soon as we can. Members of trade union AMCU have embarked on a secondary strike in the platinum sector. The action is in support of striking. That's in the gold sector. The Association of Mine Workers and Construction Union has been on strike at Sibanye-Stillwater since November last year. They are demanding a 12,500 Rand monthly salary with an increase of around 1,000 Rand per year for 3 years. However, the National Union of Mine Workers, or NUM, UASA and Solidarity have signed an agreement with the company. The agreement will see miners, artisans and officials receive a 5.5% salary increase. Hundreds of mourners have arrived at Kuma Stadium near Stilford.
Farmers as part of the economic recovery package, tenure security, and advancing women's access to land and participation in agriculture and rural economies. The Lekgotla reaffirmed education, health and skills as critical to economic development and sustainable growth. And the country needs a healthy and skilled workforce for a productive economy and active citizenship. Education and health must remain apex priorities and must be considered as an investment and not a consumption from an economic perspective. The Lekgotla agreed that we would ask government to fast-track social infrastructure, particularly schools, clinics, water and sanitation reticulation, and the construction maintenance community assets. The ANC will mobilize and organize communities to take ownership of all public assets such as schools, libraries and clinics as the first line of defense, with government implementing an integrated plan to ensure safety at schools, clinics, hospitals, colleges and universities. We once more commit in the coming term to turn South Africa into a construction site. I think the President has emphasized this one. Building national, provincial, rural and urban roads, dams, sewerage and water plants, and other economic infrastructure. And infrastructure will also support our industrial and localization plans, as well as the skills revolution and a mass apprenticeship program. The manifesto committed to make early childhood development compulsory this year. And the Lekgotla look at how we will work towards implementing this objective, because early childhood development is very, very critical. The implementation of skills and competencies for a changing world, such as coding, robotics, core skills, focus schools, play-based learning and reskilling of teachers will provide young people and teachers or educators with skills of a changing world, including the fourth industrial revolution. And the manifesto commits to continue to, I quote, open the doors of learning to all, focusing on quality and innovation to equip young South Africans for the world of tomorrow, and therefore to work with all stakeholders towards a skills revolution. The digital revolution provides us with new opportunities to expand our integrated development framework, with possibilities for new sectors, new opportunities in existing sectors, and new business opportunities and domiciles. And on Eskom, Lekgotla also discussed the current challenges faced by Eskom. Reliable and affordable energy is indeed very critical to household, businesses, and the economy more broadly. And the Lekgotla received briefings from the relevant minister on the challenges facing Eskom and recommendations from the presidential panel. And it requested the minister and government to consult with immediate effect with all stakeholders, particularly trade unions, within the coming weeks on these recommendations and other proposals. And the Lekgotla discussed a wide range of issues when it comes to international relations and cooperation. And these issues relate to international relations and cooperation, its importance in advancing South Africa's socio-economic needs and development. This broadly includes economic diplomacy, global trends, SADC and the AU, peace and security, and stability, as well as the effective use of South Africa's non-permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council to advance the AU Agenda 2063. And the Lekgotla also spent time discussing the current challenges facing the people of Zimbabwe and DRC. In this regard, the ANC recognizes the importance of peace, security and stability in these countries, particularly the important role of economic development in the lives of ordinary people. To this end, the ANC remains committed to addressing the root causes of conflict, including inequalities and underdevelopment, and promoting inclusive political dialogue. Social cohesion, Lekgotla identified the need for an overarching value system, Ubuntu, and call for a national action plan to combat racism, xenophobia, homophobia, misogynity, and related intolerances. This action plan should promote tolerance at workplaces, in communities, schools, and other education institutions, on the sports fields, the creative sector, and in public and private spaces. And in the words of the late Comrade Chris Hani, we must continue, I quote, to build a nation where everyone will love and respect each other, irrespective of race, religion, or origin. And voter registration, you know, this coming weekend, 26, 27 of January, since the launch of the manifesto, which was so successful, you could see the ANC United, the ANC Renewed, ANC members and volunteers and leaders across the country are already in communities and are going door to door to encourage South Africans to be part of renewal, part of unity, and growing our country together. And we therefore say this is the time to go out in numbers to go and register, so that you register to vote, because you can't vote if you are not registered. This includes a special focus on those under 40 years, who are the majority of unregistered. The IEC on the 27 and 26 and 7 will be opening all voting stations to allow people to go and check and allow them to register, those who are not registered. Voters are also encouraged to fetch their uncollected IDs from the Department of Home Affairs offices wherever they stay. Young first-time applicants for IDs do not pay for their IDs. We want to remind our communities out there that first-time applicants for IDs do not pay for their IDs, as they can also register in this coming weekend and until the voters roll close with their temporary IDs. We call on all voters to flood the voting stations over this weekend to check whether their addresses are still correct. And we call on all employers, especially those in the retail sector and farms, to enable their workers to go check themselves and go and register and check their status. And then in conclusion, the ANC will continue with its program of renewal and unity, winning back trust, and we urge our people throughout South Africa to renew our mandate when we go to the polls in May this year. Simply said, we are saying this is the time, come elections, vote ANC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade SG, for the statement. We will now allow our colleagues from the media to ask clarity-seeking questions. All members of the panel here in front of us are allowed to answer, but the SG will lead all of us in answers. So, can you get your hands up? Those who want to ask questions, you'll just introduce yourself and tell us which media outlet are you coming from. We'll start with you, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7. In that order.
Thanks so much. Yes,
where's our mic?
Okay, we'll hear you.
We'll hear you. You can proceed.
Okay. My name is Lisa from the SABC. I've got 2 questions. Firstly, on Eskom, I didn't get to hear like the actual detail of what was discussed and what was resolved around the issue. Just actually talking about the land that I mentioned. We know there's a lot of issues around Eskom. Recently, there was the whole view around electricity prices going forward, and there's also the unresolved controversy around the IDPs. did the ANC Lekgotla get into that, and what was discussed as a result of that? Secondly, on Africa, peace and conflict. Well, in fact, let me just go to Zimbabwe next door. You know, I don't know what was discussed in the Lekgotla, but in terms of, this is what we can see, it's falling apart, and when Zimbabwe falls apart, it affects South Africa. So I wanted to know what is the plan as far as South Africa is concerned. First of all, we know Zimbabwe is still under sanctions, US and EU sanctions, and despite the fact that they held elections last year in July. Is the ANC or the South African government not concerned about the situation in Zimbabwe, which directly affects us as their direct neighbors? Thank you very much.
The second one.
Okay, my name is Ndlebu. I'm with the SABC. Secretary General, mine is just simple. On the Reserve Bank, have you managed to find each other, especially on the issue of the Reserve Bank, because on the nationalization of the Reserve Bank, because sometime last week or during the course of this week, we had different views coming from the President, the Secretary General, the Governor of the Reserve Bank, on whether the ANC will go ahead with its nationalization of the Reserve Bank. And maybe, if I may to ask, the adoption or the inclusion of the resolution on the nationalization of the Reserve Bank at the conference in 2017, was that just a move to appease those who were for a radical socio-economic transformation? Because it seems there is a section in the ANC that is not really for that nationalization. And if maybe there is one who's against nationalization in the panel, what would be the disadvantage to nationalize the bank?
Thank you. The third.
Sure. Leo from the Sowetan. Mine is just very simple. When will the president announce the dates for the elections? And secondly, when can we expect the finalization of the list of the names that are being sent to the IEC? I know that the ANC is submitting the 200 names to the IEC. And perhaps, if I may find out, has there been names that have been removed from the initial 200 that were submitted at the risk conference in 2 weeks ago? Thank you.
Number 4.
Sam Kulongo from ANC. Mine is more about state capture SG, and we'd like a response directly from you as the CEO of the ANC and not Mr. Gordon. SG.
It's not a conference.
SG, what do you make of Minister Nomvula Mokonyane's letter she sent through her lawyers yesterday, where she never inserted whether she is denying the allegations made about her by Angelo Agrizi of the bribes from Musasa? What do you make of that statement of hers, not saying whether she's guilty or not? And also, what's the role of funders in ANC rallies? Do you as national supply food at your Zangoba rallies or the rally that you've just had in Devon of people who come to the rallies? Was she soliciting or trying to get these funds from Musasa for the work of the ANC of her own personal gain? And then the last question would be, what process or steps do you then take, since you say you are seeing these allegations which are rather damning at the State Capture Commission of Inquiry? What do you then do to those who are implicated by Angelo Agrizi, including Vincent Smith, who's resigned or stepped aside from all committees he chaired in the National Assembly? Thank you.
Number 5.
Number 5, my name is Natasha Piri from Channels Television. SG, are you not concerned, was the ANC not concerned that Agrizi's testimony at the inquiry might affect the party's performance at the polls? Thank you.
Number 6.
Good afternoon. It's Bonolo from NetBank 24. I have 2 short questions for the SG. SG, the sentence.
2 questions to the ANC.
SG. I have 2 questions to the Secretary General of the ANC. Your sentence, or his sentence, the
South African Reserve Bank must pursue flexible monetary policy regime and without sacrificing price stability et al. In short, can this be interpreted as saying the ANC will nationalize the South African Reserve Bank? My second question. Dr. De Vere, the Secretary of the Commission, was implicated in wrongdoing, and he decided to step aside pending the finalization of the Commission's probe into his complaint. The Minister of Environmental Affairs is the latest minister to be implicated of wrongdoing in the Commission. Shouldn't she step down pending the outcome of the Commission's probe on the allegations that have been leveled against her? And as this commission continues, it is expected that more ANC leaders and sitting cabinet ministers will be implicated. What should happen to those ministers? Should they not step down pending the outcome of all these investigations?
Let's be intimate aside, not set aside.
Step aside.
Someone is going to contest you.
The last one, number 7.
Natasha from the Business Day. I have 2 questions. The one is on Eskom. Can you be more specific, to add to my colleague's question, about the recommendations? Do they include the potential breaking up of Eskom, or do they include retrenchments? And the second question is around the Reserve Bank as well. Are there plans to put forward the attempt to nationalize the Reserve Bank in Parliament, to start the process there? And the second question is around the mandate of the bank, which is very separate from its ownership. The governor of the Reserve Bank told us last week that the constitutional mandate of the bank is already to take into account issues like employment creation and economic growth. What exactly is the ANC saying? Are you wanting to amend the constitution to change that? Can you please clarify that so we can understand exactly what you mean when it's already part of the mandate of the Reserve Bank to take into account employment creation and economic growth? Thank you.
The last one.
It's kind of put back up from Eyewitness News. My question has to do with the ANC list and whether it includes people like Batabile Dlamini, Nomvula Mokonyane, those who have been implicated in the state capture inquiry and other proceedings. My other question has to do with Zizi. Earlier you said Nomvula Mokonyane was acting in a personal capacity and you were going to investigate these allegations against her. Are you trying to distinguish the ANC members from the party itself? Are they different? So when a minister is, doing dirty dealings, is corrupt, aren't they not part of the ANC? Are they acting in what capacity were you saying that? Can you please explain?
Sorry, can I have an add-on?
Yes.
Thank you. TV from News 24. Just a little based on what Tom is asking you. Is the ANC going to refer the Integrity Committee to look into these members? Because that is not an issue of guilty findings, it's an issue of the impact of people's actions on the party. And then questions about particular members. Will those members be looked at and maybe asked to step aside as you head into the elections? And then my second question also to the SG. You've kind of spoken many times, alluded, that you might go to state capture to tell many tales. And to speak about how many sides or stories must be told. What have been your thoughts thus far? Have you maybe approached them already? When can we as South Africans expect to hear from you about what you understand about state capture, Mr. Makashule? That's it.
No, thank you very much, colleagues. We'll now allow the leadership to respond to questions that you have asked. And then immediately after that, we'll allow you to go to the newsrooms on the wonderful work that you are doing. Thank you. Thank you, SG.
Well, I'm the Secretary General, so I can direct the panel to respond. That's what I should do, so that you see that the ANC leadership as a collective is one on any points you have actually asked. Because I'm sure you are looking for where do we differ? We don't differ. Because there are clear conference resolutions, and we are marching on, we are moving on. We've implemented the national conference resolutions. And all those conference resolutions include whether it's the expropriation of land, whether it's the nationalization of the Reserve Bank. I think we are talking very clear about the Reserve Bank here. I don't know what you understand with public ownership. Independence, there is a clear distinction between independence and ownership. Ownership will be ownership by public. You call it nationalization. That's the resolution of conference. It is very, very clear. So we'll be implementing that resolution. Let me allow comrades to respond. I'll come back because the date of election will be decided and set by the president. It's the prerogative of the president. Whenever the president is ready, he will actually announce that date, because the president is the president of South Africa, whilst he's the leader of the ANC. I think I will give other questions to the panel here, so that we show you that we are a collective leadership.
But if you get directed at you.
I'll come back.
Okay.
There's nothing directed to me. It's a broader question. Come. Don't personalize this matter.
It's very good, SG. I like what they say. And you say they must not personalize the issue. I fully agree with you. I want to respond to the issue of Zimbabwe, which is a question that was asked. Yes, of course, in terms of sanctions against Zimbabwe, for those who've been on the agenda and on what South Africa has been doing as far as Zimbabwe is concerned, is as old as when we had a facilitation team that was in Zimbabwe, that was requested to travel from the US to the UK to the EU finally, where we have been calling for the lifting of the sanctions in Zimbabwe. And actually we thought that after the elections, despite the challenges that came immediately after that with the deaths of some people, we thought that those that had imposed the sanctions on Zimbabwe would look at Zimbabwe differently, particularly because SADC and the AU itself had indicated and had sent people to monitor the elections, including the African National Congress. However, the issue of sanctions, they were imposed by those who imposed them. We will continue to engage with them to say if we want Zimbabwe to really recover, it's a bigger and fuller package, not just a package of what South Africa is developing, working together with other government departments. It's also about how the Western countries in particular who impose those sanctions respond to our request. The second issue you raise is whether we are concerned about the situation. We've repeated this over and over again to say that Zimbabwe is our neighbor, and if Zimbabwe is our neighbor, when the house is burning next door, you don't fold your hands and your arms and you say, it's got nothing to do with me. In fact, when the economy of Zimbabwe is not operating very well, it has an impact on the economy of South Africa first and foremost. It's also got an impact on businesses which are not run by government, but businesses, South African businesses, are operating in Zimbabwe. when those businesses are not able to be paid for services that they render, it is a problem for the economy both of Zimbabwe and that of South Africa. It is for that reason that the government has been engaging with the Zimbabwean government. I think those of you who know, there was a meeting, I saw that in the media, it was indicated already, that there was a meeting in December which was trying to look at what package can we develop together to make sure that we assist in rescuing the economy of Zimbabwe. But also from a political party point of view, you'll be aware that the ANC has been engaging with ZANU-PF and will continue to engage with ZANU-PF through the Secretary General. But more importantly, we are not only looking at it only from the perspective of the African National Congress alone. We are looking at the former liberation movements and how they also relate to Zimbabwe. So in short, what we are saying to you is that what happens in Zimbabwe has got a direct impact on us, and you know that we've got so many millions of Zimbabweans who live in South Africa. We would like to see them also being involved in the resolution of the conflict in Zimbabwe. Finally, in the discussions also, as you can see, the statement talks about inclusivity. We believe that in resolving the issues of Zimbabwe, we've got to be inclusive in our approach, but of course, working with the governing party, because the governing party is ZANU-PF. Same thing applies with the DRC. We want to see an inclusive situation, and the role of South Africa is not to take over on processes, but to contribute towards creating the peace, security, and stability.
Doctor?
No, thank you. Just on Zimbabwe, is to say that we continue to monitor the situation and we will also utilize the experiences we have to deal with situation if it deteriorates. But up to now, ANC has been informed that the situation has not deteriorated and we have not seen changes in numbers up to today. The issues, because I respond on the economy very briefly. Most of the things around the economy, we're looking for practical steps to be taken by government, and most of the issues will be then outlined in the State of the Nation, and once the government has considered all those issues. So we'll urge you to pay particular attention in this year's State of the Nation address by His Excellency the President. But very brief on Eskom. The issues which were discussed by this Lekgotla of the Alliance was to look at the urgent and implementable steps to deal with the critical challenges facing this organization, particularly including those of liquidity. So we'll then expect the government to finalize those suggestions and come with actionable steps in relation to how do we deal with this. And also to come up with options. And we hope that the President, when he addresses the station, will come and spell out the options which are available. But we also were looking at the issues, guiding principles, we ended there. That in whatever we do, we should make sure that we reposition, in this repositioning of Eskom, that the issue of jobs and the issue of skills is addressed as a matter of urgency so that we don't have unnecessary job losses. And we're also saying that as a caring organization, we remain concerned about price increases. I think those are the things the government will look at and the details that come with when they finalize the option and bring them back for implementation. I thought I should just cover those. I think on the issue of the Reserve Bank, we have covered it correctly. There are no differences within the ANC. The ANC has taken certain resolutions. I'll urge you to read those resolutions very carefully because they are available. And as SG has said, there are no differences. Now that we have taken the decision, because we're in the phase of implementation, that's where we said caution must be done. We must explore things and make sure that we don't compromise the independence of the bank as we do all these actions to implement the conference resolution. What is critical is to ensure the balance when we are taking the decision on these things, and price stability and all those factors, jobs, economic growth, that there should be a fairer balance. So we'll be looking at government then to spell out those things and how they'll actually action them, and allow the President to put those things in the State of the Nation address. Thank you very much.
Firstly, we would like to echo the sentiments expressed this morning by the chairperson of the State Capture Commission, Justice Zondo, in relation to what happened this past Sunday. It was indeed a travesty of justice that an evidence not led before the commission with a list of names, some of which were generated, was published. That act was prejudicial. It undermined the integrity of the commission, and there was a clear reprimand by the judge about the role of the media. And I hope that we would have learned a lesson, because if we were to rush for scoop, we are likely to compromise the integrity of the commission. You must remember, although the proceedings at the commission are not that of a criminal nature, but the commission works on the basis of the principles of odi arteram partem, which is a principle of fairness. We can't, on the basis of one version of a witness, infer guilty, and without making an assumption that there is another alternative version that may come. And that call we want to restate as the African National Congress. We must respect the right of other persons implicated, in as well as the commission will have a right also to inform people who are implicated well in advance whether they're implicated, so that they can prepare their own submission, their side of the version, and it's important for that. That's why we say it's important that we must always uphold the principles of odi arteram partem, although it's not a criminal proceeding. People who are implicated, and it's important to make that distinction, because if people are implicated, it does not mean we must run what we call in the statement. Firstly, we are avoiding to do a running commentary on each testimony of a witness. A testimony that is not cross-examined, a witness that is a testimony which is not corroborated, a testimony which is not even collaborated. We take it as gospel truth. In many instances, you may find a testimony presented by one witness contradicted completely. And I think if we are to prejudge already and preempt the outcomes of whatever testimony presented, it does undermine again the legitimacy and integrity of the commission, because it's only the judge at the end of the work of the commission must make recommendation, must make findings. The ANC can't, on the basis of one submission or testimony of one witness, rush and find somebody guilty of the ANC, because the commission must be allowed to do its work. That's why in the statement we say those implicated must approach the commission to give whatever alternative version they have and approach the commission. And I think it's important to state that, so that we don't use this commission as a kangaroo court, or we must not use this commission to run public trial to find people guilty even before the commission concludes its work. I thought that is important. In relation to the question which was asked about the ANC rallies, food and so on, was such a big organization, and I made example with some of you who were in Durban. I see a couple of you were in Durban over the past weekend, with a rally of about more than 100,000 people. They come all over the country. What usually happens is that as they leave, some of them, they leave the previous day to a meeting that will take place the following day. The place where they leave could be Western Cape, could be Limpopo. They are driving to Durban, about 16 hours. We are a responsible leadership on all spheres of our leadership. Where they come from, there's got to be a preparation of catering. You can't just bus people 18 hours as a leadership from whatever area, expect them to go to a rally. There is no responsibility of leadership. The leadership must take responsibility, but what you may not find in the rally of the ANC, with 50,000 seated people, you find us distributing food inside the stadium. But we are responsible to bring people in the rally, but it will be irresponsible of leadership of the ANC. Expect people from Western Cape to Durban, and it will be irresponsible of the provincial leadership of that province not to cater for such long distances. And I'm not already leading evidence about whether what is before, what is alleged is what the ANC must. If there is a specific allegation about the ANC we had said last year, we will go before the commission. We already started, led by the former Secretary General. We will again go, if the schedule of the commission allows us, to explain the issues of our interface in terms of deployment policy, our interface between the party and deployees of the ANC. We already indicated, without fear or contradiction, that our president will go towards the end of the commission to give our own report as a governing party for the past 25 years. What did we know? What did we not know? What did we do? What did we not do? What are the lessons? It's important as a governing party. We did that, remember, with the TRC, led by President Mbeki, to give a report about our own role in the liberation struggle. We did that. So we'll do the same in terms of this commission. So there's no fear about the ANC giving accountability where the ANC is implicated, but we'll do encourage, as we say in the statement, because we support the work of the commission, and we'll defend the commission because that commission's work is important for our democracy and the future of our developmental state.
In addition to what Comrade Zizi has said, there was a question about Nomvula Mokonyane, my comrade, and Batabile Dlamini. There was also a question in relation to as to whether they are on the list or not. Bottom line, the list of the African National Congress will be released by the ANC when the time comes. Secondly, the African National Congress had a process of who gets into the list. And that list process started at branch level and finally was concluded at a provincial level by the provincial list conferences. The National Executive Committee of the ANC receives the list and goes into principle as to whether that list is representative, first and foremost, of our geographic spread. Two, whether that list also takes care of the national question. Three, whether that list also has the 50-50 as a principle by the African National Congress that we need to have 50% women, 50% males. And also, does the list have youth? Because we cannot be talking about young people and then not finding them on the list. So as to whether who is on the list or who is not on the list is not something that we can have a discussion about right now. And I think that when you get the list, then you can ask us the questions that you are asking us now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Lindy. I think from our side, related to the question of fundraising and ANC receiving funds, look, as the African National Congress, we do receive donations from individuals and from business people who donate and pledge to the ANC through the Progressive Business Forum. We do receive such instances. In some instances, for instance, when we go for our January 8 statement, we would have a colour dinner before, where people can buy tables, and some of those proceeds that we get from there goes into the ANC coffer. Normally, even individual members, out of their own salaries, they can set aside 100 rand or a 200 rand debit order, which runs every month to assist the party, and it differs from individuals how much they can contribute on a monthly basis, and that is part of what we appreciate. We will not deny any business which is willing to assist the ANC to do so. What we would only deny is when that particular exercise is used for nefarious intentions. That one we would deny. On the issue of the President and the SG differing on the Reserve Bank, I think there is somehow a discord from how we interpret some of the statements which are made by the leadership. The President spoke to the independence of the Reserve Bank in line with the Constitution of the Republic. That particular independence, as it is a practice globally, of having central banks and reserve banks independent from either parliament or the judiciary or so on, that is allowed. But what we are talking of within the independence is that the Reserve Bank must not only focus within its independence on inflation targeting. It needs to expand its mandate to include economic growth and job creation. Now, what the SG spoke about was on denationalization. Yes, indeed, it is true that we want the Reserve Bank to be a public asset which is public owned, in particular and primarily by South Africans, as it is the case elsewhere in the world. Because by public ownership of the Reserve Bank, we mean that public investment companies like PIC, like IDC, like stock firms that we have, like agricultural unions, like taxi associations, like individual burial societies, we want them through a share scheme to get access as South Africans in the Reserve Bank, so that whatever we get as proceeds and income and revenue from the Reserve Bank, it must first and foremost help South Africans, because currently it's 60% owned by foreigners. So whatever that comes as income and revenue from or shares growth from the Reserve Bank goes to international people who may not help us to grow the economy internally, even though we accept direct foreign investment. But to a certain extent, we must also talk about the South Africans owning their own public asset as part of us broadening the economic participation, as well as broadening the economic ownership. Because currently as it is, we only tax less than 10% of South Africans who must pay for social responsibility, or more than 90%. The 90%, by and large, are consumers and not owners of the means of production. And that particular industrial and power relations need to change in the economy if we are serious about radical economic transformation and the ownership of public assets of South Africa owned by us. Be it Eskom, public ownership, it will help us if it's owned by PIC, because PIC is mainly pensions, unemployed insurance fund of South Africans. Then if they are a majority shareholder in Eskom, it's better. If they are a majority shareholder in the Reserve Bank, it's better, because whatever that we get as proceeds would directly benefit an ordinary worker on the street, an ordinary hawker in the street, an ordinary spar shop owner in the street. So that's what we mean when we talk about broadening the economy. So I think SG...
Well, of course, that is the ANC's NEC briefing there regarding just their NEC meeting that they've held recently, and of course their Lekgotla as well. We continue to unpack news across the spectrum, everything that is going on, a lot happening, of course, and the state capture inquiry continues to make headway as well. We'll cross to that now, which is happening in Parktown, where the former CEO